For the King can be a difficult, unforgiving game with its RNG-based roll system. I found a couple guides out there, but most of them were either really in-depth or not condensed enough for my liking. So here's my version of a beginner's guide, or maybe some tips and tricks to For the King. I'm going to go through them briefly and in no particular order, so I hope you learn something that helps you out.
Okay, so the first thing I want to mention is that when you double click, it'll speed up your moves and then you don't have to watch the long hit animations. This is really useful when you're hitting things, but I'd recommend not always doing it when stuff is hitting you so that you don't miss any status effects or anything that might have been applied to you. When starting out, your team comp is pretty important. Blacksmith feels pretty strong at the beginning because of his high damage and defense, but he's really slow and I get annoyed of him pretty fast. Scholar is really strong across the board and pretty much used throughout the whole game, so they're obviously a great choice. And I think the Hunter is pretty good to start out with too, so I'd start Blacksmith, Scholar, and Hunter for my first team. Down the line, you'll unlock new characters like the Trapper, who personally I prefer more than the Hunter. You may get the Woodcutter and like him more than the Blacksmith, or the Gladiator if you buy the DLC. Just remember, at the end of the day, it's all personal preference, so it doesn't matter that much. Maybe unless you're doing the hardest difficulty, but in that case, this probably isn't the video for you. My last point on team composition is just to keep in mind that your characters take turns in order, so in your 3 slots, you want to place them accordingly. I'd say usually try to place a tank in the middle, because they'll always get hit by the area of effect attacks. A really quick example is if I have a Trapper and I like to use my Trapper to ambush people, I might put him in my first slot so that he gets the first turn always and has a higher chance of being able to actually be the one who arrives at a monster first. So basically just take the order of your team into account too. Now, quickly for new players, I want to touch on the lore store. Basically, when you're playing campaigns, you earn these things called lore points, and then you can use them in the main menu in the lore store to buy items, places, new characters, and cosmetics. I recommend going through and prioritizing your upgrades according to your personal preference, but I would try to prioritize permanent changes to the world in the first category, like fountains that teleport you around, statues that give you more experience. They can be really useful and will affect every campaign going forward. The minion counters are also really useful. The more you play, the more lore points you'll get. The further in a campaign you get, the more points you get. So if you just play, you'll rack some up pretty quickly. Alright, so now let's get into some tips that might help you in the actual campaigns themselves. Try to keep your characters close together for fights so that you don't risk any unnecessary deaths or anything, but also, don't try to avoid fights that much. If you avoid too many fights, you'll end up underleveled and you really won't have enough gear or gold to do too much. At first, I used to share all my gold between my characters because I wanted them all to have enough money to rest at the inn and buy any gear they might need. But that's actually the wrong move. What you want to do is typically have one character that has a higher gold multiplier. So say some character that has a loot that gives them more gold, you want to funnel all the gold to them because you'll get extra, and then you can just take some of that gold off of them and give it to your other people who need it. Buy as much Godspirit as possible, but try to save it, because remember, it's always cheaper to rest at the end than it is to use a consumable Godspirit that you aren't getting back. Seriously, stack Godspirit in the early game. You'll need it. But just as, if not more important than that Godspirit, is the pipe upgrades. They'll end up saving you a ton of Godspirit anyways, and Godspirit will get really expensive as the game progresses. I try to keep a large amount of consumables on each character at all times. Some characters and items have an ability called Party Heal. This lets them use one Godspirit to heal the whole party instead of just themselves at a slightly reduced rate of healing. If you have this on a character, I would highly recommend to focus on upgrading their pipe as much as possible, because if they upgrade their pipe, it's going to make the Godspirit heal more for everyone when you use Party Heal. On the topic of healing, try to gauge your character's EXP, and you heal when you level up, so you can save on the Scholar's Wards and use those to hit a new level, or just do it in combat if you're a little riskier, but you can use this to save Godspirit or spending money at an inn. Some weapons have Pierce on them when you land a perfect hit, and those are personally my massive preference. I mean, having a Scholar able to consistently pierce people's resist while dealing decent damage on a skill is really useful in my opinion. My last tip for this video is to keep track of things that refresh your focus, like hero statues, and just try to be efficient with your focus. If you're going to get full focus for free soon, try to use it all on other useful things. If you have a Scholar who has refocus, they have a random chance to just get a free focus, so you kind of want to keep a free slot open for them so that they can utilize that ability, right? I'm sure there's a lot more that I could talk about, but I'm going to end the video here because I like to keep it short and concise. If I keep playing and find some more information, I'll be sure to let you guys know. But you can also feel free to leave any information and tips in the comments for other people that might watch the video. I appreciate any support. Thanks so much for watching. This is Bryce, signing off. I hope you have a wonderful night.